Conversations across time, 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 across time, conversations 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 across time, conversations.
I'm Vivienne Crawford, and welcome to Conversations Across Time, the program that allows you to witness imaginary, honest, no-holds-barred conversations between historical personalities. These persons, or immortals, if you will, have greatly shaped the conversations and issues of today. Invited guests will be discussing a variety of topics, both past and present. You, the viewer, and I will witness their unscripted interactions. Join me as we become voyeurs to these frank conversations between historical personalities. We will witness what they might have said to each other in a relaxed and casual setting. These conversations impact on today's issues, and that is why you are sitting here as an audience. These conversations across time impact the issues of our lives and times. You and I together will get a glimpse into these fascinating personalities. Welcome. I'd like to welcome the viewers to our panel tonight. And seated next to me is my dear friend, former state representative, Babette Josephs. Next to Babette is the lovely Sally Hemmings, who is best known for her extramarital relationship with the third President of the United States. Seated next to Ms. Hemmings is, of course, that fabulous actress, feminist, dancer, and all-around historical person, Miss Josephine Baker.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. And next to Ms. Baker is the third President of the United States, former Secretary of State, diplomat, intellect, inventor. Please, we welcome President Thomas Jefferson. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I want to give some information to you. President Jefferson, you were a brilliant intellect, and you produced magnificent words in the Declaration of Independence regarding freedom and liberty. Yet there was always a moral conflict between your eloquent words and the realities of your private life regarding African Americans. You were condescending when you reflected the ideals of internationally known poet Phyllis Wheatley with your remarks saying that her poetry was below the dignity of criticism. You were duplicitous in your debates with Benjamin Banneker on the subject of the mental abilities of African Americans, saying that they were an inferior race. Moreover, you refused to free your slaves during your lifetime. Question, President Jefferson, what was your attitude regarding the education of the children that you had with Sally Hemmings? Other men of your time made provisions for those children, and you did not.
Well, you have to understand the situation between Sally Hemmings and myself. Initially, there was a relationship between Miss Hemmings and myself. We tried to keep the relationship secret, as well as the events that followed.
Wait, you had 6 children. How secret could that be?
Exactly. And we tried to keep it. Question. Why
Yes.
did you keep it secret? What was the need that you felt that you needed to keep it secret?
It was a matter of career and image.
Oh, career
And
for
image.
yourself.
Like every other man, right?
I wouldn't say every other man. However, seeing as how I was the father of the Declaration, there were certain images to
And
maintain.
many children as well.
But initially, Miss Hemmings and her husband were paid some hush money, and the matter was
money.
kept secret at that time. Eventually, things came to light. I came clean about it, and that was the end of it. I would expect that since I paid her husband, that he would be able to provide for them.
You came clean after you were accused in the Virginia Recorder.
These things do happen, but as I said, I came clean, and that was intended
You
to
came
settle the
clean
matter.
after you were exposed. That's not quite
It's
exactly.
not exactly.
Very honorable.
Not very admirable. I mean,
I try to
you know,
maintain some honor.
here you're running for president. You're telling everybody you're a leader. You've got all these eloquent words in our founding documents, and you're acting.
I'm
like
sorry, but
a-
I just can't, keep it to myself. I really do think you're a hypocrite. No offense.
Well,
But you go on, you say,
Josephine, I was getting there.
excuse me, ma'am, you go on and you say in your speeches that you oppose slavery, no slavery, and then here you are, 100 slaves, and Sally Hemmings, of course.
Initially, when I wrote the first draft of the Declaration, I
Really?
did make provisions. There were anti-slavery clauses in the initial draft.
Anti-slavery clauses, okay, yes.
And I had resolved to release my slaves. However,
But-
in the debates with Congress, I was under pressure with Congress, from Congress,
All
excuse
but
me.
me.
So you gave in. And we're supposed to look up at you. We're supposed to look up to people who didn't give in.
The guy that said biracial America couldn't happen, and
You had 4 children, 4 living children who depended on their parents.
on their parent.
Well, the other parent had no power to help, really. I don't understand really why she stayed with you when she was in France. I mean, she should have walked away. That's what I would
That's
have
what I
done.
said, and I was just thinking about this. But since Paris is of course, opposed to slavery, it's legal in Paris. I feel like you should have definitely taken the chance while you were there to persuade him to free you.
Persuade. What does that even mean?
It means
I didn't have
to-
a choice. Would you have walked away? You're the
Yes,
nicest
I
girl,
would have
you're
walked away
14,
because
you have a new
because you
place to
only
see.
have one life to live, and well, I want to make my life as best as it can be.
On the
And
other
that's what I
hand,
did.
to blame the victim is really not the way to go, I think.
I'm not
There's
trying
one
to blame
person
her.
here
I'm also not trying to blame
who
her.
gets
but-
the blame.
Yes, we are all ganging up on him, but I want to speak about everyone. I do feel like there's a little thing that we have called dignity. And while you were in Paris, you should have taken the opportunity to try to free yourself.
In
That's
Paris,
what-
I was free. I wasn't like
course.
you. In coming here, I was a girl in France, and I came and left France as a woman, coming back to the USFA and being a slave. And I came back for the liberty of my children, knowing that they would have a life that I didn't have, and that you had, Miss Baker.
Well, you could have just stayed in Paris. That's why j'adore Paris. But go ahead, say what you wanted to say.
So I don't understand how you could write all these words and be sleeping with a woman who really couldn't say no. For years.
My wife had passed on.
Yeah, well,
I'm a
tough.
man away from home. Sometimes a man gets lonely.
Yeah, my
Just a
heart
typical
bleeds.
man, just a typical man. Huh?
She was
Oh,
be caring.
typical man. What about the typical woman flashing your breast all over the screen any chance you got?
Oh, I am absolutely happy with the way I look. If you want me to dance now, I'll do it for you. I'm just happy, and that's who I am. And I'm not afraid to show it. That's why I left America, because in Paris, in France, they accepted me, and they loved me, and I know everybody else does too, but go ahead. I'm confident with who I am, and that's who I am, and that's how I'll be.
That's beautiful.
Yes, it is, because I'm beautiful. Sorry. Just
But I don't think we
I
should,
have to
we
agree
should
with her with
blame.
that. I mean, France is a more free society than ours.
Oh, I thought you said you were going to agree that I was beautiful, but go ahead.
no.
Yes. Francis, yes.
Oh, okay, and she's also quite attractive. But
Thank you. Merci.
right, but France is. She's right. France is a more free society. Here in America, we do tend to be a little more conservative.
To put it mildly, conservative.
We don't allow
Conservative,
We allow-
racist, stuffy,
We,
fat.
we allow slavery, we allow disenfranchisement of large groups of people, they can't vote. We allow child labor. We allow, I mean, a little bit more conservative.
perhaps it's quite a bit more conservative. But
A lot more conservative.
that was one of the things I liked about France. It was a little bit more free society. But, here in this country, we can't even have nude statues. But
Exactly, and I was dancing on a stage in my banana suit. Oh my God, j'adore la banana suit. I loved it.
A banana suit. Hope you didn't slip in a
So
peel.
did everybody else. No, slip on a peel.
Well,
Maybe.
I loved about France the fact that I had my own money and I could do things. I could support myself, which I'd never done. I'd never even chosen my own clothing, except the maid's outfit.
How did you get your own money? Didn't he give it to you?
Yeah.
Well, that's not having your own money.
Would you have said no? It's kind of my own money. It's more than the slaves
I would have
had.
said no.
Plenty of
Why
women-
would you let him do this to you only for your own personal benefit? I mean, you know what he was doing to you. He was keeping
Well,
you as
now
his
I know.
own.
Now
That's
I
not
know.
a relationship, and that's not love. Believe me, I know what love is. I've been married 4 times.
Well, you've been married 4 times. That's my example of marriage. My parents couldn't even be married. My father was a white man. My mother was a mulatto woman in Virginia in the South. I had never seen it. He was 30 years my senior. He seemed like my father.
I would think until he got you in bed at night, sure. Absolutely. But I will say that something that you started, the exploration of the West through
Yes.
Lewis and Clark,
Yes.
on that expedition, you might not have known it, you might not have approved of it, but there was a woman who was an Indian woman, there was a former slave, the rest of them were all white guys, and they all made their decisions in concert. Better than you did. In concert, they made their decisions, and nobody was eliminated. Now, I don't know if you had any influence over that. If so, you should say so, because
These are
you've
men
got to
in the
redeem
wilderness.
yourself in this bunch here.
Well,
These are men out in the wilderness. They had to make do with what they had available to them. Add to the fact that at that time, communications, well, compared to today, were extremely poor. Sometimes it would take months for word to get across from one point of the country to another.
Of course. But what they did, they could have eliminated those 2 individuals. They could have kept on treating the ex-slave as a slave. They could have subjugated the woman and said, you're here to guide us, don't open your mouth, don't give us any political thoughts, we don't want to know what you want to do, and they didn't. So if I were you, I would claim credit for that, because your stock is very low in this bunch here. You need some way to redeem yourself.
why are we forgetting the Louisiana Purchase? When he literally doubled America's population and income?
Right,
Our
and
president
spread
was.
slavery to more states in the South and more in the West. Good idea.
All right.
It's interesting that Ms. Hemmings, in this mixture, there seems to be some conflict, because on the one hand, you seem to be defending Mr. President Jefferson, and on the other hand, you do realize on some level that you were a bit of a victim.
Well, he's the father of my children. Of course, I'm going to see him in a great light. And he was there and kind of led me into the world. He brought me to France. It showed me a whole new world that I'd never seen before, that I never even dreamed of.
You take you to official functions?
No.
But I do treat my slaves very well.
I'm glad to hear that.
did you
When
say
next
sons?
time I decide to be a slave, I'll look for you.
Okay, and at this point, we're going to take a break. I would like us to continue this conversation, and Mr. Jefferson, perhaps you'll have some idea as to how you can defend yourself. I do feel somewhat put upon that I put you in this setting with 4 women, and and at the same time, you seem to have answers, but I think we need a little bit more of an explanation in terms of the compromises that you felt you had to make. We need some understanding of how did you get to be so great on one hand and so flawed. Yes. Lowly.
Sometimes you'll find many great men to be enigmatic.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to be.
Enigmatic is probably a kind word for how we are viewing what it is that transpired between you and Ms. Hemmings. Okay, we'll be back in a moment. And so, the story begins. I am someone that's always been interested in history. So one of the things that in one of my former incarnations, I was a history teacher. And I thought that history was always taught when the kids could get interested in it and when they could have some understanding of the personalities. So I had this idea, and I was here at Philly Cam, and when I started talking about doing this show, the more people I talked to, the more people it seemed would be interested in the concept. So Babette explained to you that I saw her on a corner because Babette is a former state representative, and I knew that as a person with a feminist background and a progressive background, it would be wonderful to have her discuss things that were going on today, and we could apply it to historical instances. So what we do, what Conversations Across Time is, we take actors playing historical characters, and we have Babette and myself, and we ask them questions, and we mix the time periods. So that's why the title Conversations Across Time. So we may have Frederick Douglass having a conversation with Eleanor Roosevelt. This brings an interesting twist, and it gets you to know both of those personalities. So we're very excited about this, and we try to put people together that everyone would be surprised about. So we do Thomas Jefferson and Josephine Baker. I'm thinking we've done Abraham Lincoln, for instance, with Eleanor Roosevelt and Frederick Douglass. We also are doing Woodrow Wilson and a good German, and we're going to talk about how World War II came about, because the Treaty of Versailles was very instrumental in bringing about the hatred that Germany had and the feeling of regret that they had, and that's why Hitler could come to power. So we talk about history from a standpoint that makes it interesting, and we do hope that you enjoy us. It's controversial, it's not a polite conversation, it's just people going at it and discussing ideas, and we leave you to make your own judgments about what could have happened and also about the events that have happened to allow you to put them in perspective. I hope you join us for Conversations Across Time. It's an idea that has been germinating for a long time, and I believe there's something for everyone. It's education and entertainment.
Across time, conversations 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 across.
Before we took a break, we were discussing the difficulty that the panelists had with the fact that President Jefferson was duplicitous at best. There was some conversation that alluded to the fact that there's a belief that you had, Mr. President, that blacks are inferior. And so I would like to pose the question to you that if indeed it was your position that blacks were inferior, what did you do to begin a process for educating black youth? In fact, did you educate your slaves? And as a follow-up to that, did you educate Miss Hemmings? Was she literate?
I want to hear this.
At the time, education of blacks was illegal, so I was not able to be able to educate any of my blacks. I would educate them only enough for the purposes in which they were brought into this country, as trade and slaves. Cooks.
Wait a minute, you were in
servants.
Paris for
See
how many years?
that sentence that you just said, the last one, see,
Yes.
that is why I let go of my American roots. That's why.
Oh, really?
And
Yes,
wait a
that's
minute,
why.
you were in France. Was it illegal?
You were the minister of France. You couldn't give me a book.
Was it illegal to educate Africans in France? I don't think so.
I did intend to return to the States, and
And they would come back educated, and then you would
how
be
would that
in
be
trouble?
accepted? White America would not accept this idea of an educated black.
Wait a minute, I thought you were a leader.
I am a leader.
Oh, you
but
are a
couldn't
leader.
lead
Oh,
in
so-
a place that was uncomfortable for you that would help somebody else, huh?
I was simply acting as minister to France. I was following my predecessor, Mr. Franklin.
Right, who had many children in France too, with many women, I believe.
What was my life not worth educating, giving me a chance, giving me a choice to be a dancer or a singer or something?
You were excellent in what you were hired for, to be a servant.
Oh my
Excellent
God, I
practice.
can't. See, you are just so pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. You know, when I went to France, I believe in 1925, when I was about 19 years old, I was illiterate in French. I didn't know anything, but I stuck with it. And I taught myself, and I practiced, and I made something of myself, and I became literate. You shouldn't have listened to him. You shouldn't have abided by his rules. You should have went out there and you should have tried.
Well, I'm here, and my kids are going to have something so much better than me. My children are carpenters, artists, painters, cooks. Something better than I was.
Well, that's something, I guess, but no thanks to the president.
She would not have been able to do that because she was too busy being my servant. And this is what she was part of.
Do you want me to punch you in the face? I'm sorry, but really. What? Who are you? Why are you doing this? Why are you?
How can you talk that way and then put words on paper that sound as if you would certainly never tolerate a situation?
Because he's a liar, that's
He's a pathetic man. That's who he is. A pathetic man. Absolutely.
This is to relate to the other men in Congress. These are the type of men we were. This is how we related.
Yes, but you, as I said before, you were a leader.
There's
You're
no
the third
excuse. This is the
president.
way it was.
Right, exactly.
Even as president, I had limited powers.
Well, we've noticed that in the modern life world as well. The president has limited powers, but that doesn't mean
Very
the president,
lacking.
in his personal life, or one hopes soon her personal life, can't act like a decent person.
Revolution was a recent history. Had I made drastic changes in our society, I would have faced probably another revolution or civil war of some sort.
Maybe. Isn't that the risk you're supposed to take when you're a leader, when you're a president?
Not when the country is less than 30 years of age.
When you have something that's morally correct to do, and you did not do it?
Freedom first, economy second, and then we start working on society.
Freedom first. I know. I was thinking the same exact thing. Freedom first.
From
You
British
never even
rule.
freed me. Don't even talk to me.
Exactly.
See, we broke up your relationship here already. Yes. Those 4 children would have never been born if we had been there, would they have, Josephine?
Yep.
Nope. We would have taken her away and she would have made something for herself in Paris. She would have learned to
And
read.
those children of yours, I would have helped you out with those.
And if you'd taken
It would
her
have
away,
helped.
you would have been arrested. Those are the laws of the time.
Many people in Philadelphia ran that risk throughout the Civil War and before. And some were arrested. And I am very proud to live in this city of Philadelphia where people did that. Quakers did that. Religious people did that. They took in folks who were called by folks like you slaves, and they got them someplace where they could be free. And they did it at considerable risk to themselves because they knew it was right.
Are you accusing me of taking advantage?
I'm accusing you of raping her repeatedly. That's what I'm accusing you of. She had no way to say no. When you cannot consent, when you do not consent to a sexual incident, you are a victim of rape or a survivor. She's a survivor of rape.
I did not put any pressure on her. I did not threaten her.
You owned her. You owned her. What pressure else do you need?
This was an accepted relationship.
Yes, but you were supposed to be above the times.
Well, obviously
Sorry.
he's not, so.
I guess at first, would you deny your master giving you attention?
If I were in a country where
Yes,
I
I
could
would
go free, I would walk away.
Yes, I would be free.
I would only
I would
be
choose
worried
freedom.
if my children were going to be left in danger if I walked away. And there were many women who did not walk away from slavery because they worried about their children. Never being free or being punished or worse. So did you threaten her with that?
Let me ask you this. How could she walk away in a land where she does not speak the language?
Oh, come on. Nobody can speak French the way they want you to speak French. You can. There are plenty of English speakers I am sure she could have found.
Je n'ai dans la liberté, mais je n'ai jamais déshonré sa famille. I would have went out there and I would have learned French. That is what you do. And like I said before, you only have one life. One life.
Which I did great in. I was
Okay, being a slave, yes, great.
I wasn't just
Perfect.
a slave. I bore children into this country, which is an honor most people don't even have.
That is very low. That's very, very low.
You had not borne any children yourself, ma'am.
Well, she adopted 12. She gets some credit for that.
Perhaps. Or were they your slaves?
No, children, you don't, the relationship of children to parents certainly has some aspect of property because you're responsible for them and they
responsibility.
depend on you having custody. But you don't own children. People don't own children. People owned other human beings. You owned another human being.
Yes.
You owned her children. And I just can't ever think of you the same way I did before I knew that.
I am not without remorse. I'd like to say that I'm happy that her children went on to bigger and better lives.
Where one was a cook, it's great.
Well, not a slave, but
It sounds almost like these other children, that her children were trained to be servants also. A carpenter, a cook. I mean, and not that these are not honorable occupations, but I'm certain that those children could have, in fact, gone on to become something more.
is that what they wanted?
Well, we don't know.
Some people are satisfied with a mundane life.
And
No
would
one
some
is
people,
satisfied.
would those be slaves?
That's your definition. Is a mundane life slavery, or is mundane life safe and acceptable? Perhaps the presidency or some political office versus the proverbial 9-to-5 cubicle. Which would you prefer? Which has less worries? Which has less hassle?
Exactly. I'd never picked cotton. I was in the house. It was easy for me. It's how I saw it, at least after I came back from France.
I think what we have here is a situation where, Ms. Hemmings, with all due respect, you probably never got out of the slave mentality. The way that you lived your life never allowed you to even know what vistas were possible for you and what would have been possible for your children. And as we sit here now, you still have conflicted emotions about this man.
He was my father figure for the longest time. He took care of me as best as...
What other father figure would she have?
That is pathetic.
Pathetic?
Oh, yes, very.
I think so.
Because a father doesn't sleep with his daughter. At least we don't accept it.
Difference between a father and a father figure.
Wow, this was an intense conversation. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to you returning to visit us again when we have another dynamic conversation across time. I want to thank my guests tonight, Representative Babette Josephs,
My pleasure.
the lovely Sally Hemmings, and the fabulous Miss Josephine Baker,
Merci beaucoup.
and President Jefferson. Thank you so much for coming, and we will look forward to taking this discussion up again, and perhaps you'll have some better answers for us. So, until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us for Conversations Across Time. Good night.
Conversations across time, 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 across time, conversations across time, conversations across time, conversations Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations across time. Conversations